Yo, Counter Attack podcast for myself, Daps. Guys, keep liking, subscribing, sharing, all of that good stuff. Right. So, I don't know where to start. Guys, I always say I'm going to do better. And at this point, you guys, the fact that you guys still follow me, you guys still watch my stuff is good. But I need to do better. I'm going to do better. Again, if there's anyone, I just want to, when I put out content, I just want it to be good. I just want it to be good quality and everything. And there's a few things I'm trying to work on. So if there's someone that can help with the graphics on screen and overlays and thumbnails, then just let me know, because I think that's what really stops me from putting out the content that I really want to put out. But anyway, guys, so I've just finished watching Champions League. Real Madrid are through, going to face Arsenal. Difficult game. Obviously, if I start with Arsenal, as expected, played a weakened side, and I watched about 30 minutes of it. Right before, I watched about 30 minutes of it, and just right after the goal, whenever the goal was, the PSV goal, that's where I stopped watching it. And I was just like, do you know what? Let me just go and watch Real Madrid, because this game was set from from the first leg. We knew we were going to go through, but I watched Real Madrid, and listen, if there's one team that can stifle any attacking team on their day, it's Atletico Madrid. They don't care about the game being nice to watch. They don't care about the aesthetics of the game. They just care about getting a job done. And they played the perfect game for Real Madrid. And obviously Real Madrid went through on penalties. But as well, that Julian Alvarez penalty, that's a bit harsh, right? But because even from the replays, I couldn't quite see. Maybe it's just me, but from the replays, I couldn't quite see that he touched it twice. It wasn't clear for me, but I'm sure they looked at it and thought it was twice. So they were a bit unlucky, but Real Madrid were underwhelming, man. But this is what they do. You see people that look at Real Madrid play in the Champions League and say, they're not that great. This is what they do. If you go back over the last 3-4 years, there's probably about 2, maybe 3 knockout performances that they put in where it's really good performances where it's like, but they just know how to get over the line. They've got this mad, I don't know if it's witchcraft or what when it comes to this league. When it comes to the Champions League, but they just always manage to get the job done. And that's one of the biggest reasons why I don't want to face Real Madrid, because Atletico, they can be beaten. Do you know what I'm saying? If you do the job on them, especially at home, you can beat them. But Real Madrid, they just got that thing where they just know how to win. If they do decide to show up on their day, obviously it's a bit crazy for whoever they're playing, but they can play absolutely poorly and still manage to get the win. But it was expected. Arsenal now playing Real Madrid, and I'm not looking forward to that game. And I'm going to talk about Liverpool and PSG and everything as well. But I'm not looking forward to that game because, number one, Arsenal have no striker. So already you're losing in terms of in that area. On top of that, Real Madrid, all they know is attack. Do you get what I'm saying? So they're always going to, especially if you play open against them, and too many times Arsenal, when they play, there's times where they trust Gabriel and Saliba and just leave them one-on-one with an attacker. But you can't really do that. We saw what happened today with Mbappe. One-on-one, gets the penalty. Do you get what I'm saying? And there'll be too many of that against Arsenal, I think. And they've got too many players who, if they're given time and space and you're not on it 100% of the game, they'll punish you. So I did prefer Atletico Madrid, but equally, it's Real Madrid, so we just have to just go. And in terms of, I haven't really recorded since Arsenal came out of the title race, but I said it way back in maybe November. I said Arsenal were out of the title race, and not because Liverpool were going to do great, but I just didn't have faith that Arsenal wouldn't drop that many more points. But they've been dropping points, and now that they're out of the title race, all that they've got left is the Champions League with a massive hurdle. And even if they do get past Real Madrid somehow, you've got Barcelona, you've got Bayern Munich. These aren't easy teams, and even Aston Villa. I said Aston Villa, when did I say this? I think it's like 2 pods ago. Aston Villa are tailor-made to upset people in this Champions League. Because Unai Emery, he is just, I don't know what it is, but when it comes to competitions, he just knows what it takes in those competitions. And when you look at the squad that they've got, you've got Asensio who looks like he's right at home. You've got Rashford who looks like he's at home and playing like himself again. Do you know what I mean? And just the way that they set up, they're great for cup competitions. Over the course of the season, they'll let you down here and there. But in terms of one-off games or two-legged games, perfect. Hence why they've been such a problem and why they've got so far in the Champions League. So they've got a massive, massive chance. But yeah, I'm a bit annoyed. Well, I'm not annoyed anymore with the whole Arsenal coming out of the title race. But you know what? I don't even want to talk about that. We know what it is. But this ain't an Arsenal podcast today. This is more like a Champions League one in the aftermath. And because I need to give you guys content. Oh yeah, I'm back in Nigeria next week for the qualifiers. Is it next week or the week after? I'm back in Nigeria. So yeah, just look out for the content with some of the Nigerian players. And if there's any Nigerian player in the squad that you want me to talk to, let me know and we'll make it happen. But yeah, man, Liverpool. Listen, over the course of the 2 legs, yeah, Liverpool were the weaker team. PSG were the better team. I did think that at Anfield they would turn over PSG, to be honest, because as good as PSG were for the first leg, that's the best I've seen PSG in a while. Do you get what I'm saying? So, and I didn't think that they could reach that again. And I think that Liverpool were, in my opinion, that's Liverpool all season, where they give you a chance, but if you don't take those chances, which a lot of teams don't really do well this season against them, they will always create and, get one chance and go, and they're really clinical. Unfortunately, they couldn't replicate that against PSG for the second leg, and, like I said, rightly so that they're out. But what I did want to talk about was Salah. So Salah's been locked up now for those 2 games. To be honest, I actually think he started well for the second leg. But Mendes really and truly locked him up, which is fine. What I find interesting, though, is that all of a sudden he's gone from Ballon d'Or top 2 options to the outsider, and now Dembele is above him. And to be honest, I feel like that's quite wild. And not to say Dembele ain't having a great season, because he's definitely had a good season, especially since the latter end of last year, as in the calendar year. Whereas what Salah's been doing this year is just been crazy. And if we're judging them on that, Salah's having a better season. And yes, he got locked up those 2 games, but I've also seen games, especially in the first part of the season and the back end of last season, where Dembele was doing whatever. And it's just interesting how people can so easily flip-flap. 1 minute, you're, like I said, odds on. Next minute, you're behind Rafinha. You're behind Dembele. And it's like, oh, you'll be lucky to even get third. Do you get what I'm saying? And yeah, I just find that interesting. Do you know what I mean? And it can happen to anyone. If you look at most big players over the course of, their careers, you don't always get good games. You don't always have good games. There are going to be games where you're kind of non-existent. And it happens. But there's also games where he'll turn it up and be the difference. It wasn't to be for him that time. And yeah, but now people are saying he's not, worthy of a Ballon d'Or, which depends on how the rest of the season finishes and who wins the Champions League and that. We'll see. Because I'm hearing people even putting Kane in the conversation for Ballon d'Or. So who do you guys think should be in the Ballon d'Or? And also, I saw an interesting post. Just while I remember, I saw an interesting post about Zaha. So Zaha put up a post saying, I think this is from his Snapchat. Just got to make this clear. Just because you haven't been fortunate to play for top clubs doesn't mean you're not a top player. So please, I'm just a baller and will always be. So don't put me in streets will never forget baller category. I may not have won much in football, but that doesn't define my talent. And real ballers know ballers, not the badge you wear. So I hear what he's saying. Even though I do think when people say the streets won't forget, I do think that they're talking about maybe underrated players, but more so to what Zaha's talking about. I think they put them down as underrated players, but that's also their level. To get what I'm saying, and almost disregarding the actual quality of the player. And it's true what he says. Listen, there's so many good players that, and I think people measure a lot of good players by what they've won or the teams they've played for. And you can't always do that. And that's why he says real ballers know, because even to play at any level, professional level, like real ballers know what it takes to get there. They know what it takes to play at that level for that many of years. And he was a Premier League player for however many years on the trot. Do you know what I'm saying? That's a very, very high level. You've got some of the best defenders, fullbacks that the Premier League has ever seen. They hate playing against Zaha. So I hear what he's saying in terms of don't put him in that category. Just put him as he's a good footballer. But I do feel like a lot of people say, he's good for that level. Do you get what I'm saying? They don't really put him as just a good footballer in general. So listen, fair play to him, man. I'm hearing it, man. What next? Olaina. I've spoken about him before. I didn't realise his contract was up in the summer. But you see, Ola's going to have a lot of suitors this summer because of how he's playing. Now, I don't know if Forest are offering him a new contract. I don't know any of that. But I do know that if he does leave Nottingham Forest, I reckon he can go on and get a top 4 club. That's how good I think he is. He belongs in the Champions League. I know Forest are on course to get into the Champions League, but he deserves a really, really top team, man. And this leads me to my other point in terms of, and I spoke to him about this on the pod that we did. If you look at players now, when they get to a certain age, like the rules haven't changed. Players will always peak later on in their career, unless you're like, every now and then you get a player who peaks very young and then they just kind of tail off. But for the most part, 95% of players, I would say, peak late 20s, early 30s. And I don't think that's changed. And I've been saying this for so long. And I think we're now coming back to a time where people and managers actually understand, we actually need the older players. Not even older. Not everything is about 21, 22. Because I've been saying it for ages. When you look at a team like Chelsea, who the oldest player there is probably 27 years old, it's no coincidence why they're in the position they're in terms of the inconsistencies. You're always you can be a good player when you're young. You can have outrageous talent, but you're still going to have go through the experiences, go through the development, go through the ups and go through the downs. And then by the time you get to 26, 27, you come into your own and you know your game, you know what is expected of you, you know what you're going to face when you're out there. And then you're just a whole different player. That's why we're looking at players and it's almost like people are realising that they're good players. So I mentioned Ola. I mentioned Iwobi. Well, I haven't mentioned Iwobi, but I mentioned Iwobi now. Even McTominay's having a really good season. And people are just writing him off. Like, you get to that age, that hasn't changed. And I just wish that, if I don't even wish, I just think that we're coming back to that, where people are realising that you need some of these players. You need the older players. You can't just always be going for young. Because I don't know who it was, but back in the day, someone said you can't win a Premier League with kids. And you can't. You need those experiences. That's why a couple of seasons ago, Arsenal's team was so young and they brought in a couple more experienced heads and they elevated. Obviously, they just got second. But you look at Liverpool, you look at Virgil, you look at Salah, and they're playing at the peak right now. Do you get what I'm saying? And they've been their best for the last 5 years. That hasn't changed. Trent now is coming into his own. He's no longer a 18-year-old boy. Like, he's coming into his own, and you can see, and I was really impressed with him yesterday, by the way, and you can see how he's coming into his own. So yeah, all of this stuff about you got to be X amount of age or whatever, like in terms of young players. And I hear that you got to build young players into your team, but you have to have the experience. You have to. Because when chips are down, you look at Real Madrid, they've got young players, but you know they're going to have the older players in there too. They're going to have the older experienced heads like Rudiger, like Lucas Vasquez. They're going to have those players. Modric. You need those players in your team. Valverde. How was Valverde now, by the way? By the way, Valverde, what a player. Let's see. He's 26. Get me? You need those players who have like been there and they know what is expected. Like you need that, man. By the way, Valverde, what a player. See, when I think about players that I really like, my type of player anyway is Valverde. Do you know what I mean? Yes, I like the little ballers, tiki-taka and whatever, but you see Valverde? He's got the energy, the technique on that man is mad, and he knows ball. You get me? Like, he is someone that could fit into any team. You could put him in any position and he'll do a job to a high level just because he's just good at football. And I love players who are just good at football. So, yeah, I think that's it from me. Is it? Oh, no, that interview. Gary Neville and, is it Jim Ratcliffe? The Ineos man? See that interview there? I rate Gary Neville because he literally did ask the hard questions. I saw that he's the Ratcliffe. He's done another interview with BBC as well. So I think he's on a PR run, whatever. But yeah, that interview, I think it was interesting how he mentioned certain players are not good enough, and I think that's a very dangerous game when you're an owner. I think he's got the right ideas, but what I get from Jim Ratcliffe is that he didn't want to throw the Glazers under the bus or throw anyone under the bus, but I feel like the job that he's doing is so big, and I feel like he's kind of out there by himself doing it, and he's getting the flack, most of the flack for it, not lately, but I genuinely feel like he's doing a lot of it by himself, and that is, I kind of feel sorry for him because there's only so much he can do. Gary Neville was asking about the Glazers and everything. He's just like, listen, I know they're committed. Basically, just answered that, just didn't throw them under the bus. But fair play to him for doing it. You know, they've launched the breaking news that they've what's the word? Basically, they're showing that they've got a new stadium coming up. They're going to build a new stadium. Listen, I don't know, but their money's probably finished. I can't see them dipping into transfer market and getting massive players. You know what I mean? Like massive transfer fee players. I don't know, man. But yeah, that's it for me. But yeah, look out for the content I do with the Nigerian players. And yeah, holler at me.